The Oxford Debate on the Textual Criticism of the New Testament, held at New College on May 6, 1897. There are no known copyright restrictions in the United States on the use of the text. The Oxford Debate on Textual Criticism. Oxford Horace Hart, printer to the university. The Oxford Debate on the Textual Criticism of the New Testament, held at New College on May 6, 1897, with a preface explanatory of the rival systems, edited by Edward Miller. Preface. The debate, of which the following pages contain a report, was the result of an offer courteously made by the Reverend Dr. Sanday, Lady Margaret Professor of Divinity, when I asked him whether those who are devoted to the study of theology in Oxford would be ready to hear an explanation from me of the system of textual criticism advocated by the late Dean Bergen and myself in order to the removal of misconceptions of it. The speeches made in the debate have been referred both in manuscript and in type to the several speakers for their approval and corrections. In compliance with a thoughtful suggestion, the ensuing descriptions of the two present systems have been prefixed to the report of the discussion for the purpose of reference in the case of readers who have not a familiar acquaintance with them ready for use, and it is hoped that, taken together with the debate, they may form an easy means to many students of the Bible of learning some of the chief points in a very important study and controversy. The former of these two descriptions, according to Dr. Sanday's suggestion, has been taken with the kind leave of the author from Our Bible and the Ancient Monuments by Frederick G. Kenyon, M.A. D.Litt. of the British Museum. Dr. Kenyon's description has received special praise from Mr. Hort in the life of his illustrious father. The second I have prepared especially for this little book. 1. Dr. Hort's system. Westcott and Hort's theory. One critic of earlier days, Griesbach by name, at the end of the last century, essayed the task of grouping, and two distinguished Cambridge scholars of our own day, Bishop Westcott and late Professor Hort, have renewed the attempt with much greater success. They believe that by far the larger number of our extant manuscripts can be shown to contain a revised and less original text, that a comparatively small group has text derived from manuscripts which escaped or were previous to this revision, and that consequently the evidence of this small group is almost always to be preferred to that of the great mass of manuscripts and versions. It is this theory which has been set out with conspicuous learning and conviction by Dr. Hort that we propose now to sketch in brief, for it appears to mark an epoch in the history of New Testament criticism. Groups of manuscripts in the New Testament. An examination of passages in which two or more different readings exist shows that one small group of authorities consists of the uncial manuscripts, B, Aleph, L, and a few cursives such as Evan 33, Acts 61, and the Memphitic and Thebaic versions, is generally found in agreement. Another equally clearly marked group consists of D, the Old Latin and Old Syriac versions, and cursives 13, 69, 81 of the Gospels, 44, 137, and 180 of the Acts, and EVST 39, with a few others more intermittently, while AC, generally, the later uncials, and the great mass of cursives, and the later versions form another group, numerically overwhelming. Sometimes each of these groups will have a distinct reading of its own. Sometimes two of them will be combined against the third. Sometimes an authority which usually supports one group will be found with one of the others. But the general division into groups remains constant and is the basis of the present theory. Combined or conflate readings. Next, it is possible to distinguish the origins and relative priority of the groups. In the first place, many passages occur in which the first group described above has one reading, the second has another, and the third combines the two. Thus, in the last words of St. Luke's Gospel, as the Variorum Bible shows, Aleph, B, C, L, with the Memphitic and one Syriac version have blessing God. D and the Old Latin have praising God. But A and 12 other uncials, all the cursives, the Vulgate and other versions have praising and blessing God. Instances like this occur not once nor twice, but repeatedly. Now it is in itself more probable that the combined reading in such cases is later than, and is the result of, two separate readings. It is more likely that a copyist, finding two different words in two or more manuscripts before him, would put down both in his copy. That two scribes, finding a combined phrase in their originals, would each select one part of it alone to copy, and would each select a different one. The motive for combining would be praiseworthy, the desire to make sure of keeping the right word by retaining both. But the motive for separating would be vicious, since it involves the deliberate rejection of some words of the sacred text. Moreover, we know that such combination was actually practiced, for, as has been stated above, it is a marked characteristic of Lucian's edition of the Septuagint localization of groups by aid of the Fathers. At this point, the evidence of the Fathers becomes important as to both the time and the place of origin of these combined, or as Dr. Hort technically calls them, conflate readings. They are found to be characteristic of the scripture quotations in the works of Chrysostom, who was Bishop of Antioch in Syria at the end of the 4th century, and of other writers in or about Antioch at the same time. And thenceforward it is the predominant text in manuscripts, versions, and quotations. Hence this type of text, the text of our later uncials, cursives, early printed editions, and authorized version, is believed to have taken its rise in or near Antioch, and is known as the Syrian text. The type found in the second of the groups above described, that headed by D, the Old Latin and Old Syriac, is called the Western text, as being especially found in Latin manuscripts and in those which, like D, have both Greek and Latin texts. Although it is certain that it had its origin in the East, probably in or near Asia Minor, there is another small group earlier than the Syrian, but not represented continuously by any one manuscript, mainly by C in the Gospels AC in Acts and epistles, with certain cursives and occasionally Aleph and L, to which Dr. Hort gives the name of Alexandrian. The remaining group, headed by B, may be best described as the neutral text. The Syrian Readings Latest. The italics are Mr. Kenyon's. The Syrian Readings Latest. Now, among all the fathers whose readings are left to us from before the middle of the 3rd century, notably Irenaeus, Hippolytus, Clement, Origen, Tertullian, and Cyprian, we find readings belonging to the groups described as Western, Alexandrian, and neutral, but no distinctly Syrian readings. On the other hand, we have seen that in the latter part of the 4th century, especially in the region of Antioch, Syrian readings are found plentifully. Add to this the fact that, as stated above, the Syrian readings often show signs of having been derived from a combination of non-Syrian readings, and we have strong confirmation of the belief, which is the cornerstone of Dr. Hort's theory, that the Syrian type of text originated in a revision of the then existing text, made about the end of the 3rd century in or near Antioch. The result of accepting this conclusion obviously is that where the Syrian text differs from that of the other groups, it must be rejected as being of later origin, and therefore less authentic. And when it is remembered that by far the greater number of our authorities contain a Syrian text, the importance of this conclusion is manifest. In spite of their numerical preponderance, the Syrian authorities must be relegated to the lowest place. The Western group. Of the remaining groups, the Western text is characterized by considerable freedom of addition, and sometimes of omission. Whole verses, or even longer passages, are found in manuscripts of this family, which are entirely absent from all other copies. Some of them will be found enumerated in the following chapter in the description of D, the leading manuscript of this class. It is evident that this type of text must have had its origin in a time when strict exactitude in copying the books of the New Testament was not regarded as a necessary virtue. In early days, the copies of the New Testament books were made for immediate edification, without any idea that they would be links in a chain for the transmission of the sacred text to a different future. And a scribe might innocently insert in the narrative additional details which he believed to be true and valuable. Fortunately, the literary conscience of Antioch and Alexandria was more sensitive, and so this tendency did not spread very far, and was checked before it had greatly contaminated the Bible text. Western manuscripts often contain old and valuable readings, but any variety which shows traces of the characteristic Western vice of amplification or explanatory addition must be rejected unless it has strong support outside the purely Western group of authorities. The Alexandrian group. There remain the Alexandrian and the neutral groups. The Alexandrian text is represented not so much by any individual manuscripts or version, any individual manuscript or version, as by certain readings found scattered about in manuscripts which elsewhere belong to one of the other groups. They are readings which have neither Western nor Syrian characteristics, and yet differ from what appears to be the earliest form of the text, and being found most regularly in the quotations of Origen, Cyril of Alexandria, and other Alexandrian fathers, as well as in the Memphitic version, they are reasonably named Alexandrian. Their characteristics are such as might naturally be due to such a center of Greek scholarship, since they affect the style rather than the matter, and appear to rise mainly from a desire for correctness of language. They are consequently of minor importance and are not always distinctly recognizable. The neutral group. The neutral text, which we believe to represent most nearly the original text of the New Testament, is chiefly recognizable by the absence of the various forms of aberration noticed in the other groups. Its main center is at Alexandria, but it also appears in places widely removed from that center. Sometimes single authorities of the Western group will part company with the rest of their family and exhibit readings which are plainly both ancient and non-Western, showing the existence of a text preceding the Western, and on which the Western variations have been grafted. This text must therefore not be assigned to any local center. It belonged originally to all the Eastern world. In many parts of the East, notably in Asia Minor, it was superseded by the text which, from its transference to the Latin churches, we call Western. It remained pure longest in Alexandria, and is found in the writings of the Alexandrian fathers, though even here slight changes of language were introduced, to which we have given the name of Alexandrian. Our main authority for it at the present day is the Great Vatican manuscript, known as B, and this is often supported by the equally ancient Sinaitic manuscript, Aleph, and by the other manuscripts and versions named above. Page 6. Where the readings of this neutral text can be plainly discerned, as by the concurrence of all or most of these authorities, they may be accepted with confidence in the face of all the numerical preponderance of other texts. And in so doing lies our best hope of recovering the true words of the New Testament. Reference may also be made for a short account to the life and letters of Fenton John Anthony Hort by his son, Volume 2, pages 244 to 252, and for more information to Dr. Hort's celebrated introduction, published in 1881. In the next video, I will read Bergen and Miller's system.